Hello, this is Prince from MediaSFU, and today I'll be taking you through a quick guide, particularly focused on React Native usage and incorporation of MediaSFU package. So by default, I'll be doing this presentation with a focus on Expo specifically, but then it also serves as an extension for those who are on non-Expo, the CLI version, to use without any issues. So um, particularly what we'll be doing today is one, taking any application, any React Native application as your starting point without media access, I mean the ability to send and receive media. How are you going to be able to do that with MediaSFU as your media provider? So essentially, we'll get to clone the repo. Um, then we proceed to configure MediaSFU as a package. So you can add the MediaSFU package, and then um, we set up our MediaSFU package to communicate with our application, whether it's React Native or Expo. And then eventually we test the application to make sure it works. And then we finish up with our fine tuning approaches, particularly focusing on spaces take as an illustrative example. So if you haven't seen our spaces tech intro so far, I'm just gonna go back one step, and then our spaces tech project is our dummy um, guide to installing the ISFP package in any application. And by default, there are three different repos. One is a spaces tech initial, which basically shows you what we have in the package at a very low level. Then the very next two ones are Spaces Tech Final, which we take Spaces Tech as our initial package project, and then we add the support of media. But here we mostly focus on audio uh, within the context of what we are doing for Spaces Tech. Then the very last part is taking Spaces Tech Final and then adding advanced media options, running custom streams, custom views, as well as emphasis on video, media switching, selection, and the like. And we go from specific final to specific advanced. Um, for every illustration, whether you're looking at specific final and advanced, other than the initial pretty much is just sample code you copy and then you clone and then you start from there to go get to the rest. So you take a look at specific final, for example, at every point in time when we look at, say, the React Native Expo case. There is a detailed guide at the very first level. There is a README, which is kind of an overall summary of what we changed, moving from Spaces Tech initial to Spaces Tech final. And then for every version, there is a what we call the transcript, and in here it's referred to as the public transcript, and then there is the detailed integration guides. And particularly, this serves as a much more um, detailed step-by-step approach, which you could have alongside this video, or you could, to an extent, solely rely on in terms of incorporating the same changes. We try to be as exhaustive as possible, as I'll be doing today. So by default, you're gonna have this and the Spaces Tech Final and then Spaces Tech Advanced, which kind of guides you through doing the same changes. But then um, you can still refer to the video if and then refer to both if you have any issues. Okay, so essentially, we've done this for this the Expo guide. If you check the plain React Native guide, you're gonna have a reference back to this Expo. And by default, there's essentially no difference. I mean, no significant difference between our React Native Expo and then React Native CLI Clear Vision. So edition. So we take a look at an initial setup and even the current one you'll be having in final. It's just two cases. One is references to your route navigation. So basically, it's kind of difference in there are basic differences in navigation, and then the second one is the configuration of your icons, Expo vector icons, and the like. So other than these two, which have already been taken care of, the initial changes that we make from initial to final, just providing the video guide in Expo should easily translate into your React Native CLI edition. So just as a guide for whoever is watching. And particularly if you are on Spaces Tech Media React Native version, there's a CLI. Um, Take a look at the directory name, the folder name. You are advised to kind of change the name from how it is to a much more convenient one. I think when you're on some maybe Windows and other versions, you might have issues running from a very long past name. So change this name to something simple, maybe Kamakis, or a much more convenient name that you can easily work with, and maybe even get it out of the folder, because by default it's a mono repo. When you clone this, you're gonna have this long path name in addition to wherever you see the name you're working from. Okay, so that pretty much um, uh, summarizes the introduction for now. So we'll go through the very first key step, which is cloning the repo. And we are not going to work off from specific final. We go from initial to final. So we'll go back to our specific initial, and then clone this, and then work our way up to the specific final. So from here, uh, to clone a repo, we just need a specific initial clone code. Like I mentioned, I'll be demonstrating Expo specifically just to limit the load on um, my system in terms of usage. And in essence, to be run over Expo Web, which we have web and then mobile pre-configured if you have to use MediaSFU package, and also to if you have to use Spaces Step as well. So I'm going to switch to my VS Code, and then the only thing I need to do now is to do a git clone. When I paste this, I should have my repo cloned in a couple of seconds. Okay, so once you have a repo cloned, if you take a look at, maybe take a look at the folder, there is a backend, and then there is all the other SDKs that we have currently. So by default, if you follow the initial guide, you should know that the basic application runs in the front end as in without the backend, and you optionally configure your backend application. So I'm gonna stick with using the backend for now, just to enable persistency, persistent data across different sessions. And then if you have the React Native and the React Native Expo, you particularly need to configure what you call, assuming you have to get rid of your Android folder and then get it back in. Then you need to configure your permissions. By default, you need permissions, whether it's Android iOS, you need permissions to be set up, and then you need to configure your expos, your icons, where your icons are located. So those are very two key things. You could particularly just go back to MediaSFU's package, depending on whether you are dealing with React Native or React Native Expo, to look at the installation guide for um, having your permissions set up in case you lose your folder, you delete your folder or something for Android and iOS and getting it back in. So from here, Now I have my structure as such. What I would like to do is I'm going to reopen the folder, and then I'm particularly going to focus on the first package I'll be working on, which is the MediaSFU React Native Expo, so that I don't have all these open in the window. So let me just switch to a focus view on my React Native Expo. Okay, so with my new emphasis on my um, React Native Expo package, I will open a new terminal, which I know my backend is one step up, so I'm just gonna open another side terminal, and then I'm gonna go cd dot slash the backend, so that I go to the backend. And in my backend, I'll do npm install, and also in front end, I need to do npm install. So once I get my packages installed, which would take a couple of minutes, depending on how fast the system is, I'll start my backend, basically npm start, and by default it runs on port 3001. Now, what I need to do next is to also run npx expo start. And if you're on React Native, if you're on React Native, you should just use the command to run the application as you need to. So it's going to take a couple of seconds. Okay, so I'll go switch to on the web version for ease of illustration. So if I hit W for opening the web version, I should have my application open in the browser. So in here we have our application started. By default, I will just go with an existing profile, which is say in this case Alice. And you realize we don't have any space created so far. That's all. Just start a demo initial room, and then you get back to actually getting MediaSFU package installed. So just as a demo, I'll do initial setup. No, this is going to be set up. And all right, I have this as a description, and like to free space. I should be in uh, my room without any media access. You see, there's this disconnected and then um, connect audio option. So by default, if I minimize this view, uh, by default, if I am to connect to a media SFU room, basically the ability to have media transmission both ways supported. This should change, and then this should be connected. Okay, so I will work out having media SFU package installed. So let me just end this piece for now. And in my application, in my code, what you will need to do now is to install the media SFU package. And then by default, if it is React Native, it's just media SFU, it's React Native, and then media SFU React Native Expo. It also goes by MediaSFU React Native Expo. One key thing is that you should not prefer. So let me just illustrate this briefly. So if I'm going to install MediaSFU React Native package now, so let me stop the server briefly, and you should just use the appropriate command that matches what you're using, whether it's Expo or React Native, Expo or just React Native. And by default, you are advised not to use legacy PDFs or post install because MediaSFU PF dependencies. If you use any of that, you don't get them installed. So instead of using a peer dependency, you could, instead of forcing post install or legacy peer edits, you could use an override approach. So to demonstrate that briefly, if we go to Spaces Tech Finder and we head to say React Native Expose specific repo in your detailed integration steps, so if you have to make use of if you have to make use of force or legacy, unless of course your project is at that point where you always rely on force and legacy periods, then you have to go get your peer dependency. So every peer dependency for whatever package you're working with, it should be either on the GitHub repo or the npm package.json file, and then just install the peer dependencies. Else they're not going to be installed, and you're going to have an issue running your application. So just as a caution, use an override method if a specific package of MediaSFU is conflicting with uh, your package, and then if not so, if you maybe you can handle that, or you're already in the force and legacy PDFs domain, then just uh, grab all the peer dependencies. I think about 7 or 8, and then install them as well alongside the installation. Okay, so now let's just head back to our MediaSFU React Native, in this case, export to application. So in my application, if I run this command, I'm going to have the ability to have our MediaSFU's React Native Expo package added. And they should also run briefly. So once we've installed this, I will start my application again and have an npx expo start. Once this is running, we'll need to do one thing, which is to get our application to work. We'll create a file by name MediaSFU handler, particularly just have the MediaSFU specific view we need installed, rendered in it. So switch to the web view. And as it's running, let's create our MediaSFU handler file. So in my components, I'm going to create a file by name MediaSFU handler. Let's TSX. And in this file, I'll just import and then retain the MediaSFU application. So by default, a couple of views you could render. I'll just start off with the generic and use the generic. If you prefer broadcast or webinar view, just make sure when you proceed to create a room, you stick with that. So I'll just try from that. And then I'll import MediaSFU generic from MediaSFU React Native Expo. And now I'll just return I'll just retain the MediaSFU handler as the return of MediaSFU generic expands, and then export default MediaSFU handler. So if I run this by default, I'm going to save a generic view with no options provided for pre-join and then credentials, but then we'll get to that. So by default, let's just save what the initial integration looks like. So we need to get this import in our space details to use our new handler provided. So in our space details where we have our native rendering, I'm gonna put in the import of our MediaSFU handler, and then um, I'll save it in my view somewhere close to the end, and I'll wrap it in. By default, MediaSFU has its own view. When it's a view, how it computes its UI size and the like, and I will just, because you're embedding it in a different view, you might have another overflow and awkward rendering. But then for now, we don't really concern ourselves too much about that. It's just about getting the UI rendered in the application. So let's make use of our MediaSFU handler. I'll put it underneath this participant grid, and then um, gonna have this as MediaSFU handler. Okay. So by default, you might have the grid issue. So I will just wrap this in a view with in a view with overflow and size control. So I'm gonna put a 100% view and then a scroll if it overflows, just for this use case. So um, okay. So let's head to our application and then check out what this looks like. So we have the old app. I'm going to close that, and then with our current application, if I create a new space, I'm going to name this test initial application logic. Copy this and paste out the description. So if we create a space, you'll see the default MediaSFU's view in here. And by default, so this provides an option for you to do one of two options, which is assuming you already have your details for your room you want to join, input them manually or scan a QR code. And I will highlight briefly this. By default, this is only useful for people who use MediaSFU Cloud. If you're not on MediaSFU Cloud, you don't really have to worry about this. But then, assuming for testing or whatever purposes, you quickly want to check out how to go about it. One, if you create a new room, MediaSFU via the sandbox, or even make a push request or anyhow, you're gonna have credentials which you can proceed to join. And then two, if you probably go through the events creation side, in Createm you have an option to scan the QR code instead of inputting. I mean, you have both options to proceed. So like I mentioned, this is particularly of low usage, even for both those on MediaSFU Cloud and even those who are solely dependent on MediaSFU's Community Edition. But now I'm just going to provide a brief minute or two explaining this before we get into usage of a pre-gen page, which dynamically takes and creates our rooms instead of having pre-configured room details to proceed with. Okay, so quickly, if you were to start on MediaSFU, you go to MediaSFU sandbox by default, whether through your dashboard link or you type /sandbox in the browser, it takes you to what is MediaSFU's equivalent of say Postman, for example. So almost every request you're gonna send to MediaSFU is captured in terms of HTTP request. So most of the communication happens via WebSockets when you're in a room. Other than that, the very few ones, I think about 7 or so sandboxes, you'll find them in there. And then, for example, if you go to the rooms sandbox, which uh, covers everything you can do with an HTTP request for rooms, if you go to the option to modify the parameters, by default, there's an option to create a room. If, for instance, I do join a room, delete a room, or get a room. If I do get a room, for example, and if you take notice of the output part, if I hit submit, you're gonna have the output change. At the same time, you have the sample requests generated for you, depending on the platform, which is our Node.js for now, which you can just copy, or the code you can just copy and then run anywhere you want to run, and should uh, just provide you with your result as you need. And other than that, if you would like to test the API interactively, you can just copy this. Uh, you can just copy this and then paste that here. And then from here, if I were not to have logged in, I would have had the option to say submit and run instead of, sorry, to log in instead of submit and run. So if you are if you are yet to log in, you're gonna have an option to log in before you can run this. If not, I will just proceed to enter as it is now, enter my API username and then my API key. Also, once more, super limited to people who are, but of no use for people who are not using MediaSFU Cloud in any way. But if you're using MediaSFU Cloud, whether for your primary event room or even just as a combination with your application. For example, you need an egress endpoint if you need to support cloud recording or use AI agents as the very simple case studies. You probably need to use MediaSFU solely as a cloud, and then cloud solely, or MediaSFU local edition in combination with MediaSFU cloud. And in that instance, whatever you need to do that is currently supported will be forwarded to MediaSF in a one-way direction. There's not going to be an endpoint for anybody to watch or see, unless, of course, you configure it differently on your own. By default, the combination of community edition and cloud just sends a one-way traffic to MediaSF to do things that currently your community edition doesn't support. So in terms of APIs and API key, if you were to go to your dashboard, you have a couple of API keys by default. Production keys only get used from specific pre-registered domains. So if you see a domain's endpoint, you need to pre-register the domain you're going to make a call from before you can use a production key. Sandbox key works from anywhere. So that's what you preferably be using in the sandbox here. The demo key, you don't have to make any HTTP request with your demo key. It exists internally for MediaSFU's usage when you are creating some demo rooms from the dashboard. So in summary, you have a production key, a sandbox key, and at any point in time, if you want to manage this, there's an edit button. You have the option to toggle the state of inactive to active, option to view, copy, and then cycle up. So basically regenerate a new API key for me. And when you're fine, you see, I think this is 3 per hour or something of that sort. So a rate limited, but then that's basically the implementation of a recycle and get the new API key and then change this state to inactive at any point and save. Okay, so just as a demo, I'm gonna just run the request from the browser a sandbox so that we see how it turns out. So if I complete my credentials, and I'm going to change this to a creation request. So um, I'll check out the recording parameters and the metering parameters. By default, if you pre-configure this in your event settings in your dashboard, it should be auto-populated, unless of course you want to make specific changes here. And if I hit submit, I'm gonna get a new payload that when I copy and paste here. If I run this, if I can expand this a bit, if I run this request, I'm gonna have an event room created. And by default, if you are to check this, there's a room name which we require per the current UI in our spaces stack, and then the link, and then also the secret. A very important one is the public URL, which kind of combines these details. So if you have to copy this URL and paste in your browser, the public URL and paste in your browser, it takes you straight to the event room served by MediaSFU. So all the tools you need from this end, secure code and the like, you grab from here and then you paste into your application, or you just use the public URL and then paste in your browser. And now, of course, in our implementation, yeah, in native mobile or let's say Android or iOS, really not looking at maybe 7 and iframe also, but just as an illustration. Now, I'm not also going to dwell on that for that. And then the other option, which is for the scan, if I am to go to events and create event, if I go to start a new meeting, and all I need is a name, I enter a name, say ransom, for example, I'm not configuring the rest one, and I do confirm. You're gonna see there is an option to scan a QR code, and then the option to click and go on the web. So this effectively summarizes the usage of MediaSFU's front end, particularly in a very restrictive case to get credentials and then proceed to a room without configuring anything in the application, as simple as it exists. So you get rid of this. We don't really want to focus on this. You want to focus on a front end that programmatically picks these details, whatever we use now to create, and then sends that on our behalf. And for that, you're going to need what you call a pre-join page. So if we switch to our application in MediaSFU handler, we'll import the pre-join page, and you can provide your own pre-join page as you desire, but by default, there is a pre-join page provided by MediaSFU, and then all we need to do is to pass that to our MediaSFU generic view. So if I put pre-join page and I define that as my current import and save this, I'll go back to my browser and my application, and then when I go there instantly, you're gonna see a change in view. Instead of a scan and the like, I'll have the option to either create a room or join a room. So I have these one or two options provided. Now, by default, you can have one of these pre-configured views, and then set whatever duration and then capacity you need, as limited by your your limit for either sandbox or production. If you're in community edition, so community edition, that's perfectly up to you to decide what's fine. So now I will proceed with creating a room as a sample illustration. And once we are in this phase, it's one of three things. One is I using MediaSFU Community Edition solely, or two, you are using MediaSFU Community Edition in combination with MediaSFU Cloud. And then the last instance is I use the MediaSFU Cloud solely. So configuring our server to communicate, whether it's a community edition or in combination with cloud or in cloud solely. We need to configure some things like credentials. That's if it is edition with cloud or solely cloud. Or if we're just using community edition, which might be of interest for many people, we don't really care about cloud altogether. So we don't get to worry about that. So now, I will start off with the very first instance, which is community edition. So in that sense, I'll be running my local community edition server. If you're on cloud only, you don't have to worry about that. We'll get to that stage. So for community edition, if you need that to follow the illustration, there is a guide already provided in the video recording, which you could totally take a look at. If you already have that pre-configured, I'll just proceed to continue with that. So a very key note is that if you're on, if you're running React Native with the emulator, particularly the Android emulator, and you are on Community Edition, there is a tendency that the video codec. So as a brief guide, if I go to MediaSFU, and then I go to MediaSFU open. If you check the index.js, so if you're on React Native and you are or Expo, whichever one you are building for your emulator, you might have issues with the video codec playback. Specifically, if you take a quick look at the media codecs for H.264 in its frame, um, you might be able to send by the order of preference, your emulator might be able to send video and VPH to other recipients if you are testing out, but then you can't get a playback for other people, maybe a person on the browser who is or a physical device who supports or implements H.264. You're gonna have like a blank feed or nothing coming through. So just as a quick fix for if you're on community edition and have the luxury to change to comment out this, just highlight this part and then comment out to the H.264. I mean, if we are using the emulator, and then just leave it up to the VP8 to work and the VP9 stuff to work. If you don't have the luxury to do that, as in you're on just MediaSFU cloud only, and then you will be using the emulator, you're advised um, to maybe make a not expect the video coming through or just make an actual build to run on the device and it's gonna work out perfectly. So one video codec H.264 is kind of limited. I mean, at least in my case of my Android emulator, and then you would rather comment this out. If you're running a physical device, it's fine. If not, comment it out, else you're not gonna get the video come through your emulator. So that's just briefly on that. Now, switching focus back to um, our spaces stack, I have configured my application to run on port 3005. So if I am to go to localhost port 3005 slash meeting slash start, you're going to have the UI greeting me to start the meeting. So that's basically if you have to use MediaSFU open and you have it configured, you should have indicated whether you're using the different ports you want to accept requests from, and then like you should have pre-configured support for 8081, where React Native Expo, React Native runs by default. Okay, so I'll be making use of this to demonstrate the initial case for now. So briefly, if we switch back to our application, I'm gonna pass in a local link. So to use MediaSFU Community Edition, the SDK just requires one key thing from you, where is your application running? And mine is running on 30,000, about 3005. So I just need that sole information, and then I'm gonna update my MediaSFU handler to take in that that information. So back in, we switch to MediaSFU handler, and then I will define in here where my local link runs. Um, let me use this script, and then once I have this, I'll just pass it into my MediaSFU handler. So I'm gonna have my uh, local link to be the current local link. Okay, so once I've specified this, the very next key thing is there is the connect MediaSFU parameter. So by default, it defaults to true, which means I'm connecting to MediaSFU by default. I don't have a local link. I don't have any sorry, I don't have a local link. So it defaults to true. Now, if you are using MediaSFU community edition solely, because you have a local link, if you don't specify that as false, now it's going to try to communicate both with your instance and then MediaSFU class. So now, for the fact that we solely have uh, we are solely testing the case of cloud community edition, I'm going to change this to this. And then you'll notice I'm making use of my specific IP address. Sometimes in React Native, you need the exact IP, which is the local network address. IP address is trying, if it's already deployed in the cloud, you don't really have to worry about. For local instances, sometimes you have issues with the reference to localhost. So just as you can try with localhost. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, you to make a reference to the actual local network's address. So I'll save this now, and then I'll head back to my browser, and then let's check this out. So in my browser, I'm gonna create a new space by name. So I'll say test this community only. Also copy this and paste as a description. So when I do create a space, I will not actually create a room yet. So I'll do create room, and then I'll use my name of CBNF for now, and then 5 webinar view, and then say capacity at 3. So if I do create a room, uh, you're gonna have a room created in the UI. By default, like I mentioned, it's not ideal to enforce MediaSFU's view into pre-existing because it computes dimensions based solely on the entire window. So you should expect some breaks or whatever in the UI, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. Uh, and from here, if I check, say the participants, I just have myself. Now, I'll go join the link. I'll go join the meeting in the browser in my local instance. So I'm gonna copy the meeting ID. And then also one quick check, a very key confirmation that we are in a local instance is the meeting ID starting with an M. So if you are on MediaSFU cloud, it's either starts with S for sandbox rooms, P for production, and then there's D for demo rooms. But then we never get to get demo rooms via the SDK. It's only illustrated when you go check our demo via the website. So you never get a demo room. It's either M for cloud, sorry, community edition only, S for sandbox, and then P for production. If you happen to be communicating with your cloud, your instance and cloud for egress, then it also defaults to SOP. So if you have local instance and then you're forwarding media to cloud, then a sure check that it's actually working. That it should be an SOP, depending on whether it's from sandbox or production. If it's still stuck to M, it means your dual communication is not working. So I'm gonna grab this and then go to I hit confirm. It says the event ID is valid. So from here, I can just type a name of the star if I hit join, I can join the room, and then on this side, if my probably the participants again, I'm gonna have tester and then myself, and then by default everything should work as expected. So if I turn on the camera, for example, and allow for this, if I go to this side, I should have the camera running for the other user. So in summary, every logic you expect should work accordingly. Now, uh, this technically completes the the usage case for local link only, as in community edition only. Now, you're gonna make a switch to those who have the need for MediaSFU Cloud for egress in combination with the local link. So to do that, we just two things. We need one, our community MediaSFU now should to be true, and then two, you're gonna need the credentials. So if you are talking to MediaSFU Cloud, it needs credentials. So let's just switch that. So for now, let me just end this space. So and it should be ended here. So and I'm gonna end this space from here as well. Okay. So back in MediaSFU handler, we'll make a switch of this to true. Now, once we've defined as true, we are gonna need credentials. Credentials that's going to you need credentials to communicate with, which is basically API key and API username details. Now, by default, if you are using MediaSFU's Community Edition in combination with the cloud, uh, the Community Edition is pre-configured in a way to one, have requests intercepted from the SDK, which are meant for MediaSFU Cloud, and then uh, change or update the credentials from a dummy one to your real ones you've saved in your .env file. So by default, for security reasons, you can always pass a dummy credential in here. That's if you're using MediaSFU Cloud in combination with, Cloud in combination with Community Edition. So I'm gonna define some dummy credentials, and then by default, if you make sure at least it meets the minimum. I think it's like 8 character, at least 8 alphanumeric characters, and then 64 exact 64 alphanumeric API key details. You shouldn't have an issue connecting. Like I mentioned, this never gets sent to MediaSFU unless, of course, you change the logic in your community edition. It will always come back to your community edition's endpoint of creating or joining the room, and then it validates a couple of stuff, and then changes this from the dummy details to an actual one that gets into the MediaSFU.com and then return. So if you are using Cloud solely, we'll get to that. So for now, uh, let's just try this. So connect MediaSFU now. You have a true. Then we are gonna pass in credentials because by default the page expects that. Although it's a dummy, you're gonna pass in there. So if I run this now, I'm gonna go back to my browser, and then let's try create a new room. You want to say test test community and cloud. And then I'm going to copy the same thing as a description. So do create a space. Now in here, we'll create a room now, and then I'll use the name of the name again. I'm going to do permission of 5, and then type the webinar, and then I'm going to do duration capacity of 3. So if I do create a room, now if we make a check, a very quick check to confirm we actually have both ends working, is to check the ID. So you're gonna see the ID starts with an S, which is a short check. It's working both in our system and in the SFU cloud. Now, I'm gonna copy this and join locally as usual. So I hit confirm. I can see the event is valid here. Now, if I'm gonna take a name again of say tester and join, I can join the room accordingly in both on our local. Now, if you we'll make a check. So as usual, everything working local. Just Everything should be working expected locally for you. Now, we are going to make a check on MediaSFU's website, mediasfu.com, to make sure this meeting actually exists. So, I go to mediasfu.com, /meeting /stars. Um, I'll paste this ID and I hit confirm. Yeah, so far as it proceeds to this endpoint, if it doesn't exist, you're gonna have an error that it doesn't exist. So as you get here, it means your room exists, and then I can just say some. I'm not gonna join, but then uh, you're gonna have the option to join accordingly. And by default, like I mentioned, the setup is just one-way traffic to MediaSFU's cloud. If you are combining with, unless of course you've changed it, you can obviously change the parameter in creating a room that changes that is record only from true to false. If you say it's false, it means a user can join here and have media access. By default, if you join a MediaSFU cloud within combination of or with combination in combination with community edition, you're not going to be able to see anybody because there's no endpoint to watch anything. It's just one-way traffic producing to MediaSFU, which internally we do. If you need to do a recording or AI agent or anything, it's going to happen for you. Other than that, you can visually perceive anything because we don't return the media to participants. We assume all that is happening locally in your community edition. Um, so this confirms the cloud and community edition combination. So I'm just gonna end this now. So I'll just end this space. And then we make a final case for those who be working on the MediaSFU cloud solely. So now with MediaSFU cloud solely, because you don't have a say community edition to intercept and populate with actual credentials. You don't need to provide your credentials in the application, your React Native or React Native Expo application. Now, you know, you treat this as two cases. One is you're in the development context, you can just put your API keys in there directly. And then the second case will be you're in production, so you can put your credentials directly. By default, MediaSFU provides you the option to provide a custom function. So basically, um, provide a function we call to create or join a room. And instead of sending a request directly to mediasfu.com with your credentials, we'll call that function and it's going to have the payload you need to create or join a room. And from there, uh, ideally, you should replace that with your dynamic from your dynamic credentials you provided in the UI with the actual ones. So from if the call is to your backend or whatever, you just send that and then make your request to the SFU. Then it returns it to the SDK. So let's just study the very first case where we can just put our dummy credentials directly in the UI. So if we switch to our application now, currently in our .env file, we should have some dummy API, MediaSFU API username, and then key. You will need to update this to your real ones in the first case of illustration now. I will then switch to MediaSFU handler, and instead of passing these dummies, we'll read off those two values from the handle, the .env. Like I mentioned, you're gonna have to change this to your actual as I'll be doing off screen. So first, I'm gonna change my credentials to be read off from the .env file, and this should be updated to your true value. So briefly change this. So I've made that change off screen, and then you need to kind of restart the application. Hope so for the .env files to be updated. So I'll just restart my Expo application now. And it should start soon. Okay, so I'm gonna also go to the web as usual. I have to close the other instances and new one will be opened. Drag this to the door here. So now we have this in support of having the ability to create on cloud only with our actual case. We are going to test that. So I'll say create a new space and I'm going to say test cloud only. This copied as the description. We're going to just create a room. And in here, sorry, create a space. And in here, we're going to create, I'm going to use the name 5 again, and then a webinar, and then post your three. So I do create a room. We'll have, okay, I think briefly, so think we already necessarily created room in both ends. So let's switch to a MediaSFU handler. Once we've indicated that we are just using cloud, we are not going to need a local link. So we need to get rid of local link. Yeah, so just a quick note. So if we are using cloud only, there's no local link reference. So you see, you don't have one. And then connect MediaSFU auto defaults to true. So you don't really need to specify this again. But I'm just gonna leave it out there for people to be extra sure of what they are doing. So I'll save this again, and in our browser, now this kind of defeats the purpose because we have both rooms created at both cloud. I just remember that. So let's just, I'm just gonna end this and then let's retry this. So all events. So I'm gonna recreate the new room. In this instance, I'm just sticking to uh, cloud only. So let's create an event. I'm gonna use the name uh, 5. I'm gonna go webinar and then right. So if I hit create room, okay. So I have this created now. So just to check that, if I do this, I have an S name. Now, to confirm it doesn't really exist in our local instance, I will copy this. And somewhere in here, I paste this and hit confirm. You're going to get a notification that this meeting doesn't exist. So practically, we can join this on our local instance. But then let's check our cloud, which we do know it exists. So we go to mediasfu.com. Let's reload this page. So if I hit the confirm here with the ID provided, first thing is it works. So let me just check and join it, make sure this works accordingly. So I'm gonna join the browser. So I'm gonna hit this button. Then from here, if I do as usual, maybe I start my media here. And because like I mentioned, because this is solely cloud, it's it has the endpoint to consume it as opposed to the default design of cloud in combination with your local instance, which doesn't provide endpoint. So if I start my media here from the side of the cloud, I should have the feed coming through for that media start, and everything should also, as usual, work accordingly. I said start a meeting, start a media, start screen share, and then every logic that you've ever experienced on media SFUs demo illustration should work accordingly from here. Now, let's just end this now. Then let's look at a case of production. So you can't use a actual API case. You need to use a dummy, and then you have to provide a custom function to intercept and then tune the request for you. So from this side, I'm just going to end the event. Okay, so if you make a switch back to our application now, the default logic of MediaSFU's creates or join room, and as demonstrated by the community edition, is that if you provide yourself with a local link, we are going to make a request via the local link. That's the push request head, which we've added in the community edition or by default. If there's no local link, which you don't detect in here, then you need to provide a custom function if you want the create or join request to go through elsewhere. So as an illustration, um, I'm gonna uh, say, let me just put the function, and I'm gonna expand this a bit. And in here, everything should come from maybe it's a few. So if you take a look at this, for example, this is an example of say domain function to um, to provide an endpoint. So to MediaSFU to kind cause a route change in creation or joining the room to your specific endpoint. So for example, in here, uh, you are defining the final link as something, just say the backend or wherever the request goes to and at this endpoint. And by default, MediaSFU is going to pass a payload, which is basically everything needed to create a joiner room to this function, which means it's going to go to your link, your backend. And um, whatever you do, you are supposed to return something back to the MediaSFU SDK. So by default, a classic implementation of what maybe a backend for this thing will look like, assuming you follow MediaSFU's open uh, community editions logic in terms of credential security preservation. Um, I'm going to just demonstrate that this briefly. And then by default, if you make a post endpoint to this, your slash create or join rule side on your myserver.com, it comes with a payload, which is key. Then by default, MediaSFU creates a dummy, the community edition, it creates a dummy, not a dummy, a uh, temporary credential for which we verify whether, do we have this stored in our system and we actually did generate that. If it's fast, then we do one thing. We read off our very correct credentials. So from our process.in in our system, we do know our actual API and we do know our actual API key. Then what we do is just forward the request to MediaSFU.com. But then one key thing that changes here is just the authorization. We change the API username and the API key from what was the dummy. I mean, what's coming through here as a dummy credential. And then we then populate our secure ones in here. And then everything just proceeds as such. It goes to MediaSFU and then you return our response to the SDK. So practically, if you have this, you have an endpoint to support the call to MediaSFU.com to complete the logic. So I will not be using any backend or whatever to demonstrate this briefly. I'll just demonstrate a simple intercept. Basically, I will console log, I'll send the request as it is to MediaSFU.com with my real credentials, but then I'll just print out, I'll just console log the payload in the browser so that you have an idea that actually the request did come to us first. I mean, the payload did come to us before we proceeded to just send it to MediaSFU right away. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to change this to I'm going to change this to console function where I keep the final link messages. I don't change anything. I'm still using my actual credentials in my .env. As I'm just sending the request to I'm not changing any of anything. But as I mentioned, you could just change that your backend logic. And then all I'm gonna do is console log this, which we are gonna see briefly that we did get this before we proceeded with the rest of the link. So if I save this, currently you do know the local link is it's being used. As I've mentioned, it's just solely based on it's best for me to get rid of this for now. So just based on your credentials and then your pre-join page. Okay, so back in our application, let's try out this. And finally, once you provide a custom create or join function, we need to actually update the MediaSFU handler to contain that. So if you have a custom create function, that's gonna be create MediaSFU room, and then is going to be this function that I defined. And for the further, it's just payload that is sent, and then depending on whether it's split or join, you could use the same endpoint and use the same function. So if it's a joins case and it's going to be a join with SFU room, it could still be the same function, as in the same join plate function. But then if we can, of course, define two different ones, but then let us say it's technically just payload and then changing to actual measure. So I'm gonna go with create media as room now, which means I'm passing a function to be used. And also back in the application, let's okay, let me end this space. We'll tell me you one. I'm gonna say test cloud only secure cloud only secured, and I'm gonna use this. Same, I'm gonna say it's a description, and then if I do the create space now in here, I will use something very maybe new, just like and then duration maybe 10. Let's the job 5 minutes. Okay, webinar capacity. I'll try something different, maybe like 6. And then when I hit create room, you're gonna have the payload coming through. Let's check this briefly. So if you are to check our console log, you realize somewhere up here, you're gonna have what we call the create room join, which was populated from the MediaSFU handler, and it has the create the webinar, basically every payload we made for MediaSFU being intercepted and then printed out in the browser. I'll probably open this again a bit to give. So essentially, we have our payload intercepted just as an illustration. And as usual, everything media usage is going to work, just change of case of credential logic. So I'll end this now and then we'll make a switch. Particularly one, we don't really care about MediaSFU's UI in our application. I mean, we have our own application. We want to maybe just send or receive media. We don't want all this stuff with rendering the UI embedded in our system. So for whatever system application you have, you just care about, okay, how do I turn on mic? How do I turn on camera? Off, on and off for both, and then I also screen share and all those sort of things. And then how do I send media, receive media from other people as well in the network? So for this, we'll get rid of the UI, and then the basic return case for me for the basic parameter is say return UI to be false. If you are to do that to a media SFU, so you pass in a return UI of course it's get rid of media SFU's UI in your system. So let's just end this first and then in the space and then make a switch to our application to demonstrate the no UI case. In the application, I'll get rid of everything I have currently, and then I'll just focus on using the community edition solely. So we'll get rid of everything here, and then we'll just go back to what we had initially. In summary, I'm just making use of local link only without the need for my cloud and then my cloud in combination. But then by default, if you are solely on cloud, it shouldn't make a difference. You've seen how we got there already. So here I'm going to have the local link. Okay, so I'm back to initial application like uh, I had at the beginning, and we make use of one thing. For the fact that we are returning no UI, we use the function return UI to false, which means we are not getting any UI from MediaSFU. Then once we are doing no UI, I want to be absolutely sure that there is no overflow or anything happening from MediaSFU. So I'll wrap this in a view with like a just in case something might get out of a view. So I'm gonna have a view with the width and height of 0, and then make sure it's in for the view. Let's briefly get a view from um, React Native. Okay, so once we've enforced these two, as in one, uh, make make sure we are not actually returning anything at all, and then we are wrapping it in the div. Um, I'll briefly switch here and then get rid of this view wrapped around this. It's already taken care of by the MediaSFU handler. Okay, now back in our MediaSFU handler. Now, for the fact that we are not returning any view, we need to find a way to programmatically pass what would have been captured by the pre-join page. So whether we are joining or creating a room, the parameters we would have provided, we should find a way to programmatically pass this because we don't get that interface anymore. So to do that, uh, to to do that, by default we have a couple of things we can pass for joining. It's mostly three things: the ID, the your name, and then the action part of it. And then for create, it could be a couple of things, but at minimum we need like 5 things. So briefly, I will create a parameter which I'll call no UI options, and then by default there will be my parameters uh, to join meeting automatically on MediaSFU.com, which I'm gonna call no UI options. Basically, the ones we are gonna provide automatically. And if I'm looking at a case of creating a room, I will have something like this as the basic configuration. So at least I need an action by MediaSFU of create of else is join for joining, and then There's also delete and the like if you're deleting get if you're deleting. But then duration, um, minutes, whatever it is, and then the capacity as usual. And what's my name? What name is the host gonna be? And then you provide that, and then what event type? It's either a conference, webinar, broadcast, uh, or chat. And there are there are a couple of other options. It's a buffer type, whether it's like AI agent, it's a buffer images, audio, or all and the like. But then by default, this is the basic stuff you need. Now, if I happen to be in the state of joining, this is going to be something like join some user and then some user ID as basic as that. Now, let's get rid of the join for now because of the creating primarily. And we are going to have to pass this option of joining the meeting to the MediaSFU options, the options to MediaSFU generic. So by default, I'm going to have no pre-join options as the no options by .com, which means once I go into the page, it instantly passes this to the pre-join page, and then it sends the request to whatever it is for the join operates to the room as provided. So um, we can have this. And as an illustration, I'm going to go to the browser and create a room. By default, you can't visually perceive what it's created, but then I can tell you of my uh, community edition which I'm using currently is a log that it's actually created. But then to illustrate this, I'm gonna let's go to the browser and do like create new space. I'm gonna say test no return of UI. So I'm gonna have this as a description. So if I go to create space, by default, it's a space is created. Like I mentioned, you are not gonna have it created, but I can confirm a space is created locally without the UI returned. Now, we need to do two things now. The very first one is because we don't have the UI returned, how do we get access to the core parameters? I mean, what we would have been experiencing on MediaSFU, how do we get access to the streams, the mic state, everything, every parameter that we're supposed to get from MediaSFU, and then use it in our UI. So by default, MediaSFU requires you to provide two things. One is source parameters, which it's kind of synchronizes with the internal UI of MediaSFU. So basically, any change there is reflected in MediaSFU's, sorry, in your source parameters. Then the next one is a function called update source parameters, which essentially is just a simple function to MediaSFU to call to update your local source parameter, and it's just something simple like a reference, and then not kind of an in-depth update call function. So let me just end this in this space, and let's proceed to do that. So when you're gonna define the source parameters, you're gonna define our update source parameters. So in our space details where um, we are using the application, we are gonna define a parameter we call source parameter. So um, somewhere up here, I'm gonna define first parameter, which is just a reference. I'm gonna call it um, source parameters. Get a user from React. So then we define the function we use to call the source parameters. And basically, like I say, keep it as simple on some plenty logic, but then basically just they update our source parameters to whatever is passed by the MediaSFU generic or whichever view. So I'm going to have source parameters as this, and essentially we just compare our current to the existing to the one that is provided as an update, and if it's not the same, we just update that to the provided one by MediaSFU. And like I mentioned, we keep this as simple as possible. And then now you provide an extra let's say state, which we update, we listen to changes in that rather. So for whatever change we have in source parameters, we trigger that as a state change, and then because a change that we listen to. So I'm going to say like, you can call it a source changed. And for source change, put this here, basically it's my indicator if my state, my source parameters has changed or not. So if source has changed, I'm going to do I'm going to change it by incrementing it by 1. Okay. So then once I have this, I can create a listener for source changed, and have a log for by default. Simply let's have a log for when source has changed. So let's go to somewhere. So close to here, and then I'll use focus effect, and then all I'm doing is one, a guarantee that source has changed is that MediaSFU provided us with a source parameter that has a couple of items in it as opposed to our default. Basically, if there are a couple of keys in the source parameters, and then the guarantee is that if we actually join the, maybe we try joining a room or creating a room and it doesn't work, we are not going to get a room name. If we have a room name that is actually not just an empty string, we are guaranteed that the room has changed. We've joined some room, and then for now we just console log that in the browser in our application to have a field. I understand that it's actually changed. Then we also do we also set a message just explicitly telling us that um, we have changed the just as an initial setup. So with this, we are going to find a way to pass the source change to our source and our source and update source parameters. We need to pass that to a handler so that it can pass it to the MediaSFU's generic view. So let's switch to our MediaSFU handler briefly. And in here, let's create an interface that says like MediaSFU handler props, and basically it's taking one of two actions, either create or join. And because it could be a create or join action, we need an optional option. So if you are creating, you surely need duration, capacity in the library. We never need them in joining. And also if we are joining, we surely need the meeting ID, but we never need it in creating. What you absolutely need in both instances are the name and then the meeting, and then eventually, as well as action. Then eventually we have our source parameters and then update source parameters. Now, all we need to do is to update our MediaSFU handler to make use of that. So I'm going to do this to that, and then once we are in here, let's programmatically change the no UI options from this done to reliant on whatever case we are dealing with. Okay, now let's programmatically change what this UI dot current values are, and we're gonna make a use of check of, okay, are we in a create or join situation? And depending on that, we just pass absolutely what we need for create, and then for join, we need a meeting ID if we need to throw an array. If everything is fine, we just create just the payload needed for joining an existing meeting. Now, we are gonna now pass our source parameters and then our update source parameters to our function. So the source parameters and then update source parameters. And doing this, we have access to getting real-time changes from MediaSFU and then getting the same states synchronized as MediaSFU. Now, we can just head back to our application and then we can test this out. So in our application, the very first thing we need to do is to import our props now, as our usage case has changed from MediaSFU and there. So we are gonna need the props. And then in here, because you require the parameters to pass to the handler who create a state. Basically, you create a reference, which is what you are passing to. So far as MediaSFU handlers in view, it needs the no UI, the parameters to auto create or join a room. We'll specify that as showroom details. So basically, when MediaSFU handler is in view, what are the parameters that are supposed to go to it, which we are going to call showroom details. So somewhere in update source parameters above this, I'm gonna have this as say details, and then I'm gonna call this showroom details. So basically, it's a reference for the parameters we are passing to the MediaSFU handler, and by default, this is just going to be now as at the beginning. But then for now, we're gonna pass a dummy data like we were passing in the handler directly. So let's just pass something dummy for now. And this is going to be, let me just move this down because of the reference to the source parameter. So we are passing some dummy data, which is name, new name, create, and then specific duration capacity. But then this time around, you're also passing the source parameters and update source parameters as needed. Now we go back down to our MediaSFU handler in the space details, and we do know that we need to pass this now, the updated configuration. So in here, we're gonna have just a structured form of that. Once we've passed this to showroom details and updated showroom details, just making sure it's not a blank, updated showroom details with the dummy information and going to MediaSFU handler, we should have a way to have the sync as described. So let's test this out, and then let's go to our application. And then the very first thing we're gonna do is just create a room. I'm gonna create a room, and I'm gonna say test. There's no UI sync. I'm gonna copy this and paste this as a description. So if you create a room, you see the very first thing we get is the source parameters change, which is our set message. You need to keep repeating this. I'm gonna grab this ID and then paste it in my link to join so that you see it actually exists. So let me just do function, minimize this. I'm gonna refresh this and then paste. If I confirm it actually exists, I'm gonna use some name to tester and then join this. Everything should work accordingly, which is an existing. Now, for example, if I turn on the camera here, I don't get to see anything on the side of the room because I'm not rendering media. And also we do see that our state, our disconnected state, and then controls to are stuck in the previous state. So let's just finalize our integration, particularly everything that has to do with specific tech regarding uh, connected to room serials change. Then we're gonna have access to mic control, and then how to transmit media, and then how to get media from the other end. We just proceed to finalize that. So I'm gonna exit from here. Then on this side, I'm just going to um, end the space. So we switch to application, and then we work on cleaning up in terms of specific logic. Let's switch to our application, and then um, in spaces tech, by default, in our handler and our listener for source change, if we do connect to the room, we need to um, update this condition. So I'm not going to console log the source change. What I'm going to do, if we haven't already set is connected to true, which is our media controls are reliant on displaying the control buttons. You're going to do that. So if not, it's connected. I'm going to set it's connected to true. It's basically having a change. So I can have that. And now once we have that, it's going to populate the top display. I mean, if you were to follow specific initial, we would have seen that once we are connected to the room, it gives us the controls for media. So uh, once our controls for media are in, and we have MediaSFU incorporated, now how do we have the logic of toggling your mic, camera, and the like? And by default, you're going to get everything from MediaSFU. So to start with, we'll just have a very simple dummy illustration in the specific details. Then eventually we'll isolate all these say function calls from MediaSFU to a dedicated say folder. So the very first thing we'll need is to um for mic is to click audio. So somewhere in here I can import now the equivalence of starting camera or starting and stopping is click video. And then for audio, for mic audio is click audio, and then for screen is click screen. So it basically just goes by the same logic, the same naming convention. So if I need to use um to click my mic, to toggle my mic, I will need click audio, and it requires click audio option. So click audio options, and then the actual function call is click audio. From this is going to be from the React Native uh, without the expert if you are on React Native. Okay, so in here where we handle mic toggle mic mic toggle. Uh, have it's a mix participants and toggle for toggle mic. Uh, okay, so in handle toggle mic, essentially we're not doing anything now. So if we are to use the media SFU logic, it's just going to be a call to toggle mic, and then we are going to pass in the options for that. But then because we can't visually perceive the mic transmission, I will do that with the video. So instead of click audio expecting audio, I'm just going to demonstrate briefly with video, and then switch back to the audio. So just briefly. So in case you're going to stick with the mic as an in case we are still dealing with the mic as an example, we are going to have consumptions as click. So options is a type of click audio options, and then it only takes what we call parameters. For every click option, there is a parameters required, and the parameters is just going to be our source parameters provided by MediaSFU. So our parameters will just be our current source parameters, source parameter current, and then we probably need to change the type as click or the options, and then you can just call the parameters. So uh, the parameters. So once we define this, the next call is just to call await, and then we call click audio and passing the option. So with these two, we have configured the approach to handle mic start and then mic pause and back and forth. So once we click it, depending on the state, it does the opposite. And then if we need to stop, it will stop and then start as well. So like I mentioned, we are not gonna be able to easily perceive this. So I would demonstrate this quickly with a click video instead of click audio. So with the same logic, it's just going to be click video options. And then we're gonna have click video. So lowercase, comma case, click video. And in here, I'm gonna change the toggle function. Instead of click audio, I'm gonna do click video. And this needs to be click video options. Then this is going to be click video. And then we are done with the click video. Okay, so we are gonna demonstrate this with our mic controlling the camera instead of mic. So let's go to our application, and then we're gonna do say test media controls. I'm gonna copy this as well and have it as a description. So if I create a space now, because we have updated the connected state, we have this coming through. Now I'm gonna join this on the other side. So join this briefly. I'm still gonna use the name star. Then when I join in here, now over controls, I'm going to turn on my mic, but it's in essence turning on the camera. So let's turn on our mic to see it's camera in use. So on the other side, you see we have the media coming through. Now on this side as well, if I click it off again, if I just turn this click this on. Now by default, it's not, we don't have the access to whether it's on or off, so it's still defaulting to the basic thing we had in here. We'll update that subsequently. But once we click this again, on the other side, you're gonna have our media gone. So basically, click video or click audio handles both on and off, and then same for screen share. Okay, so now at least you have seen how we send media, but then we still don't have access to media from the other side. You can't hear or see anybody from the other side. Now, that's because in essence, we are not rendering anything from the other side of the room. Now, to do this briefly, we'll just at this low level implement what the view looks like for MediaSFU MediaSFU's default UI as a guide to effect our changes. So let's I'm just gonna end this in this video first, and I'll end this space. And in here, if you take a look at okay, take a look at MediaSFU's view briefly. So it's just a quick guide. By default, MediaSFU is supposed to use this is by default MediaSFU's broadcast view. There's usually a main grid and then what we call a mini grid. This is a mini grid, and a mini grid could be a stack of two mini grids. So there could be one mini grid one and then mini grid two, which is highlighted as media grid here. By default, depending on the view you are rendering, it could be a combination of one or both. So broadcast view is always just this big main grid because it's just the host media that's been transmitted to the others. There's no instance of this mini grid spoken up. If you go to the other side, which is chat view primarily is just two people communicating. So it's always a mini grid, one mini grid appearing. It doesn't go beyond two. Now, for a webinar view combines a main grid and then a mini grid, and it's at every point in time there is a main grid and there's a um, there's a mini grid. And by default, the host media is on the main grid, in a webinar view, unless in special circumstances. So one, when there's a screen share, then the screen share takes over the main grid, or when there is a whiteboard share, it takes over the main grid. Other than that, the host is part of the main grid, and once the host is on the main grid, we get the mini grid containing the host. So that's basically the webinar UI. And then when you come to the side of the conference view, by default, everyone is of equal importance, and then they are on the same um, mini grids. And then we have the mini grid coming in when there's a start of a screen share or there's a start of a whiteboard. So other than those two circumstances, there's always a view of equal importance assigned to each participant. So this primarily gives you the view. And then in terms of code, if you were to check out how this is rendered on MediaSFU. By default, there's a whole lot of modals displayed on MediaSFU's screen that pops up with recording modal, many modal as you saw. And if you are not running one of those modals, this by default is the broadcast view, one of the simplest views you could have. Like I mentioned, it's just it's a quick guide, just a bunch of modals. If you leave the modal section, the actual logic, you have a main container component which basically wraps your UI's dimensions and the like, and then it's also wraps the main aspect container that has issues, does things like sizing, and then brings in the sub aspect, which is the controls at the bottom. And we don't have that for broadcast, so it gets rid of it. So, and then the main screen component, just how houses the main grid. If you have a main video display, like a host video, screen share, or a whiteboard, it's displayed in what you call the flexible video. And then if because it's a broadcast view, there's these touch buttons that come on top, one for controls, recording, and then expanded recording controls. Other than that, there's a audio grid, particularly just contains every audio in the meeting room. If you have whatever number of people you have, it's gonna be you're gonna have the audio seen other than your own audio, of course, if you don't want to hear that. If it's were to be the sample code for generic or conference, you're gonna have two stacks: a stack of flexible grid one and then flexible grid two. Particularly, they are there in case there's an overflow. So take a look at the display here once more. MediaSFU's approach to display is one, we try to put everything fitted in the width and height, and then if there's a need to go to different dimensions, so take a look at prime numbers 5 and above. If you have 5 videos, you're probably gonna have two in a row, and they have three in the last row. So two rows, two and three. And if it is say 7, it's going to be 2 by 2 to take out the 4, and then there's gonna be 3 at the last row. So in the same way, like 11, you're gonna have a 3 by 3 part and then a 2 part. So same way. So this is a way for us to dynamically make use of all the space available. So you could have a flexible grid 1 and 2, and then the second part always comes in when we have a prime number with videos more than um, like 5 and above. You're gonna probably have that's coming. Other than that, you are guaranteed or your media is gonna be in the first flexible grid. Okay, so Now let's head back to our application, and then we'll just uh, make use of the audio grid and flexible grid as it is from MediaSFU as illustration. So back in our space details, I'll just display just directly the audio grid and flexible grid as used in MediaSFU, just to perceive some visual feeds and audio media, which you can't perceive for this illustration unless, of course, I tell you what I'm hearing. So in here about this, I'm gonna put right out the media audio grid and flexible grid as used directly by MediaSFU. So what they're gonna do quickly is just import these two from our package. And the first one is audio grid, and it's flexible. Okay. So by default, there's a couple of references you can see in here. These are GSX elements. So audio grid as rendered media SFU relies on components to render, and then it's internally audio only streams. The actually GSX elements. Also, flexible grid relies on a bunch of stuff for sizing, which we will not be reliant on because this basis for sizing is way different from what we have in here. I'll just specify some hard-coded values for now. But then the very key part is in components to display. There is there's other grid streams, and by default it's supposed to be two stacks. I'm just relying on the very first. It's a list of lists or an array of arrays. Like I mentioned, the very first array and the potential second array if there's a need for that. So like I'm just demonstrating for your videos. We will never get the need to get into that second part. Okay, so by default, yeah, I'm gonna get rid of all these dimension things. I'll just display one row, and for whatever number of items you have in the grids, you're gonna have it as columns. Uh, and components to render, we'll create a local reference to this. So you're not gonna be reading off the values as it is from the source parameter, but then I'm gonna create two references, which I'm gonna call one as all room audios, and then one has all room videos, so which is particularly the GSX elements synchronized with MediaSFU rooms, MediaSFU state. So let's go up one more. Um, this is somewhere here, and then I'll create two. Wait, somewhere here. I'll create two references. One is going to be all room audios and then all room videos. By default, they are GSX element, UI element that we render. And like I mentioned, it's an array of arrays and it's just an array or list and then list of lists. So now, back in our source change listener, we need to update this. So basically, if there's a change in the reference, as in a source or other grids, and then however they were used per the initial illustration, we also update this locally. So so in here, where we monitor the changes, we'll have two references. One is just going to check our audio only grid, audio only streams, and then update as it needs to be, and then the other is going to change the videos. So so basically, I have a check of is my audio only streams currently the same as my room all room videos. If not, I update that, and then I'm doing the same too for the other grid streams, which is kind of like a basic state sync. So in the audio grid, now I'm gonna make use of my all room video that's in my local reference. So instead of so this is going to be all room videos, all room audios, the current value. Okay. Now for this, like I mentioned, I'm not gonna use any fixed values. I'm just going to use some dummy. I'm gonna say wait for 400, height of say 300. Then for rows, it's just going to be always be just a single row. Then here, it's going to be dependent on the length of our all room videos first array. So it's just going to be this. And then for um, the media to display is also going to be just the first part of our all room videos. Now, we just want to be absolutely sure that this is not a blank to the, it's not blank to the to start with before we render this. So I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna wrap this. So with these two provided for, we are guaranteed to have an audio playback, and then our video playback from the MediaSFU rendered here. Okay, so you can just check briefly, and then our browser. So I can close this, and then so I'm gonna create a new space which I'll call this media render. Here is gonna be the description where they create space. Now, by default, you're gonna see this coming through this new host view, which if you've ever used MediaSFU view, you could see this is a self view rendered for a user. Now, if I turn on my camera, which is mic here, see this is populated, which is the self view part of yourself for a webinar view. Now, I'm gonna join this meeting on the other side, and then let's see. So here you can join this. Okay, it's confirmed, and I do name of Twitter star. Okay, so we have the host feed, which is the new name that we are using, and then this is our own uh, our our display. Now, if we turn on our media, so camera, for example, we're gonna have that displayed in here. If, for example, I'm gonna let's say we switch, let's probably try OBS video, and then in here you should have that switch to the media. Now, almost every element as displayed as you've ever witnessed in MediaSFU's view is just displayed in here as it is. So everything with controls, if to turn off as the host, from to click this is the access to turn off someone's media. You obviously can't turn on the media or by FM to turn on the media. It should turn on the or turn off the media, and that's it. So, for example, if I turn on if I turn on the mic from the other side, I should have that the mic is on, and then I should have um the visual perception of the mic intensity working. So like I mentioned, if I turn off as the host, if I turn off the camera, I should have on the other side the camera of the user turn off. Basically, everything should work up accordingly. So now that we have configured, we have seen how we can receive and send media on this side and then from that side. We're gonna do one final thing, which is finalize our step integration, essentially cleaning up our interface, and then as moving these controls to the to a dedicated hooks folder. So essentially, in our spaces, we probably care about getting someone off, as in removing someone. Uh, Actually, when we realize when we end the space from here, we don't really close the media circle. So if we end the space from here, we just leave here, but then the room is still running. Running. So we need the logic to actually get off the room, so I'm disconnect the room and then remove someone, and then also the way we are controlling the media from here. Obviously, we are not going to render the videos in here, so we need our local controls as well, and then also like media controls in there. So I'm going to just edit this, and um, let's go to our application and briefly analyze that. Briefly, in our application, I'm going to create a hooks for, sorry, I'm going to create a use audio video SDK file, essentially in our hooks folder. So use audio video SDK file, and then essentially what you're going to do is just move every logic, kind of more of the logics we need from the SDK here. And like I mentioned briefly, it's going to be things like disconnect the user, remove the disconnect the room, as in close the room, remove the user, click audio, which we need our for specific, and then our muting of a participant. Okay, so by default, we need something like our click audio. Let's close this. Click audio, and then click audio controls to start with. I'll define two props, particularly for calling these functions to be defining. One will be the one has a reference to a user, and then the generic one with source parameter. So I'm going to have uh, use audio video SDK props. It's basically source parameters, and then functional device ID, and then control media control props, which if we need to control media, for example, we need to specify what media type we are controlling, and then the user we are controlling um, the media for. So briefly, we're gonna have functions. I'll start off with the function to toggle your audio or video as you have seen previously in the interface. So if we are to toggle the audio of a user, by default, you're going to require our source parameters in our use audio video SDK props, use of audio SDK props. And first, we just make a check, as in, are we having the source parameters? Are we actually connected? Which means we have source parameters. And if not, we try. So let's try. And the first thing we make is first check. Let's check if object keys object keys length is greater than 0. So um, if object dot if the number of keys in the parameters is greater than 0, at least we know we have, let me get rid of this. We have actual source parameters that we could use. Now, by default, we just use the option to click audio, which is click click audio. So we're gonna have to do our consumptions. It's no different from what we saw the last time, and then it's just parameters as usual. Parameters as um, our parameters will just be our current source parameters as our uh, as click or the options, then the parameters. So yeah, that's the only thing we need. Sorry, we set to complete scripts. So essentially, same as we had from before, we have toggle audio, and the same way if you're gonna do toggle video, same thing. It's briefly, it's gonna be the audio, it's gonna be video, Then we click video. It's going to be click options. Every import we need, we are just gonna have it back from our SDK. So click video, and then it's gonna leave the website. I'm gonna have uh, click video options. I'm gonna have click video. Unless if you're not sure of the options, you can just do the control or click on it, and then by default it should open up the actual uh, usage and then what is required so that I get a little bit. So this is the implementation of click video parameters, and then what you need as click video options. So going back to this, now this is a brief illustration. I don't really need a toggle of video. I'm gonna get rid of that. What I do need to do is my option to disconnect from the room. So also same logic. I'm gonna have this for this here, and then also same thing. Okay, let me just get rid of the auto completed stuff for now. So we do need this, and then we make a check again for source parameters as usual. But then this time around, the the option to disconnect from the room is it's not the same as our click video. So we actually need to get that. So disconnect from now the MediaSFU equivalent of disconnecting from the room is confirm exit. So confirm exit, which means we are gonna need confirm exit options. So I'm gonna click this confirm exit options. Then it's going to be the function of America's confirm exit. Okay, so by default, it means we are gonna build also first in our options as confirm exit option. And then from here, I will just also click on this so I get a feel of what we need. So confirm exit options, we need things like your sockets, local socket, in the case that it's a two-way communication between cloud and community edition. And then there's member, there is a room name, and then there is a where we abandon the user, which is automatically false for this use case. Now everything you need from here, it's by default in your source parameters. So there's no special follow anything you have to do. Just call source parameters, and then there's refer to existing value. So I'm gonna just have this here, and then I get the member socket and local every instance as it is from MediaSFU. And then here I'm just gonna do wait confirm options, and then does it. It's showing the logic to enter. If you are the host, it closes the room. If you are the not the host, it just exits you from the room. Okay, so once we have that, we can do the option to restrict user media. So in restricting user media, particularly what we need is what kind of media we are restricting. So we're gonna make use of the other props, so the media control props, and in here I'm still auto completing as suggested, but I'm gonna get rid of all this click audio stuff. Okay, so in restricting the media for a user, um, the first thing you need to do is to make sure you are the host. You need to be the host. By MediaSFU logic, you need to be the host, else it's not gonna work. So you need to be the host, and then you need to specify the kind of media you are trying to um, to restrict, whether it's all or specific audio, video, and the like. And a very quick check of if you are the host by MediaSFU is level 2. It's level 2. You are the only person if it's level 2. So a very quick check is you must be the host, and by default, the host is someone with the level of 2. If you are not the host, then unfortunately, it's gonna your request is gonna throw an error. So we just make sure we don't even do that by default from here. So this stops us from propagating. Now, So far as we pass this, the very next thing we need is how to restrict media. And then that's going to be control media by MediaSFU. So control media, and then it takes in control media options. So we go up here. I'm gonna get control media and control media options. Uh, media options. So in here, if we do, let's start off with doing const options. Let's try to construct our, that we see what we need. So if I click on control media options, these are the stuff we need to control. So you have some stuff like participant ID, name, and then the type of media socket, and a bunch of many of these stuff are just automatically propagated from resource parameters. All we need is the participant's ID and name, which we get from checking here. So in here, let's find the participant. By default, there is MediaSFU participants, and uh, our logic of spaces tech, if you follow the initial implementation, the guide, we we send the ID because of the restriction in the names. We can't just use any random display name as using spaces tech. So it must be 2 to 10 characters of numeric values for MediaSFU to pick up as a default name. We therefore make the IDs match that, and then we send the ID to MediaSFU. So to find the user, we're gonna do we're gonna look in MediaSFU the source parameter is a participant, which is the MediaSFU participant, and then we're gonna find the participant with the name as remote memo. Now the remote memo as passed here is the ID we are sending from the our spaces our spaces details. So our space details. So let me get participant from here. So essentially, you have that participant. Now, if you don't have the participant, you can just obviously also throw an error so that you don't propagate that uh, to the to the call. Now, in here, um, like I mentioned, everything other than the very first two are things that you can you can provide by default. So I'm gonna just do that, and you can see everything comes from the source parameters other than the participant stuff, and then the media type, the type of media we are controlling. So um, we have that, and then finally we call our control media, and then we pass in our options. So essentially, we have that completed for restricting the user's media as we specify whether it's audio, video, and then whether it's all or screen share as well. So we can do the very last one, which is removing a member, is banning the member from space, and then also we go by the same logic, but primarily just the members details needed. So in here, um, I'm going to get a defect, the default. I'm gonna get rid of this. Uh, I've auto completed what's suggested, but then the very first thing we need is you need to be the host to remove a member for sure. So make that check. Then I'm gonna fill in what is required now. Now, the equivalence of removing a member on MediaSFU is called remove participant. So remove participant, then it means we are gonna need remove participants options. So by default, it's much more of getting the equivalence of what you need implemented and what it's the similar implementation MediaSFU. So now there's a couple of them, maybe 100 or 200 in the like, or but then I can't be as aggressive as I need to be in this illustration here. At least the very relevant ones are provided on the, I think the documentation, the README for the package, and you should be able to pick the core things you named as implemented in MediaSFU's default UI to work as well to just get started. So here I'm gonna have remove participant options, and then it means the function is going to be removed. What camera case for that. And in here, I'll first try to construct just briefly what options. Okay, so we try to open this control and then click on this. You realize you need a couple of stuff. Also, here the very unique thing I need is the participant. Other than that, everything is as it is from MediaSFU. So we need to just find the participant, and we're going to do the same thing as we did here. Basically, just scale the participant, and then once if you don't find, you can ideally throw an error before you proceed. So the very first thing is to try and get a participant, and if we get a participant, we're just going to use that participant and then just call source parameter. Every single thing that is needed, we're just going to pass the same thing from the source parameter. So, and then last we make the call and then we pass in our options. So essentially we have some of the very critical things we need. So always in the block, other than the default checks for host and the length of keys, it's always options, create options, and then pass the options to the actual function call. Okay, so we effectively have most of the logics that we need, the logic that we need for our spaces tech to work in terms of controls, media transmission, then removal and the like. Now let's switch to our application and then let's switch to space details. And then we just in components and in space details, what we're gonna do is just practically get rid of our current dummy UCB. So I'm gonna get rid of everything other than flexible grid and order grid. And then I'm gonna make it, I'll make an import for the use our hook, our use audio video SDK hook. Okay, so if we get rid of this, we are gonna just import our SDK. So I'm gonna get our total audio, is gonna restrict media and then remove member from our use audio video SDK. Now let's find the current usage for clicking audio and video. Now this just let's just get rid of this. And we are going to make use of our this summary. We are not going to just use the video game. We are going to switch from that and use the bycast we need for our application, original application. So I'm going to make this toggle audio, and then all I need is the source parameters. Now, with disconnection from Chrome, currently you don't have anything under disconnect from disconnection function. When we leave a room, we need to use disconnect. So basically, I have to find under leave, and that's our current function to leave a room, and then in the implementation. Before we actually leave a space, let's call our disconnect room to disconnect us from MediaSFU server before we leave a space. So here, I'm gonna have disconnection from MediaSFU server in addition to my leaving of the space. Now, when we end space as well too, so assuming we are the hosts, we should be ending space instead of leaving space. So so in end space, I will call the option to disconnect the room before I actually leave the space. So in here, I'm gonna use something, and then I'm gonna disconnect from the room. Now one thing to is when the user is banned, our current logic, they get to leave so when a user is banned and they get to leave the space, let's also make a disconnection call before they leave the space. So essentially, I'm gonna call the disconnect from the space to make sure that they actually live there. Now, our current implementation of muting, we have a mute. Okay, so in here, in addition to our dummy species tech mute, which doesn't actually mute as a media, actual media, let's make use of our new retreat media from our SDK. So, and in this case, we'll be restricting media of audio because our specific focuses on audio. So, let's let's say before this, you're gonna do restrict media, and then we're gonna call the media type of audio. And then the last one is removing the participants. Okay, so in removing the participant, currently we just have an update in the space as in you've been removed. So before that, let's call the server to actually remove the participant as well. So now we have the logic to remove a participant, restrict their media, end the space, end the room, and then restrict mute, and then control our mic, control our media. Okay, so now we have to in our space, let's add more logic for things we care about. So, for example, once we have our media on, we surely care about our media intensity, basically how high or what's our audio intensity, and for that, one similar state is what's your audio level, MediaSFU internal state. So audio level just tells you how high or low your mic intensity is, and by default, it's a value from 0 to 255, ideally somewhere around 127.5. Basically, it refers to silence and down. And then between 1275 to 127.5, so somewhere around 128.5, maybe there's a couple of maybe not intelligent speech, but then if you are confident someone is speaking when they are somewhere 129 or maybe 130 and above, and surely for 140, you know, obviously there's an output from with an input into for their mic. So one, we are going to create a audio level, and also when we turn on our mic, we need the state to update from uh, not muted to sorry, it's from muted to not muted, so that we don't always have this option to turn on mic and mic whilst we are even having mic on. So two things we do now. We do one audio level, and then two we do our um mic state indicator. So let's look for our is muted parameter. Then here I'm gonna have an audio level value, and for these two, let's go to our source change source change. And in here we're gonna have we are gonna have two. One is to sync the audio level, and then one is to sync the mic state. So in here, just put um, if your audio level is not the same as what's in the MediaSFU state currently, we just update that. Then in our mic as well, if your mic state is not the same as our MediaSFU by default uses what we call audio already on, video already on and then screen already on. So basically, if audio already on, this means you are not muted. If video is already on, it means your camera is on in that logic. So if we look at the reverse and then currently update our, it's muted as the opposite of it. And then now, with our new audio level indicator, we will do one thing, which is put in the visualizer, basically the bars to show our intensity, and then the higher the intensity, the much more dots or bars we show in the visualizer. So I'll create a component called audio level bars, and in summary, it just like I mentioned, as described, gives us the visualization of what's happening with our audio, I mean how intensities or it isn't. And in here, by default, I'm gonna show something between 0 and 255, which is the maximum it can go, and then just show more bars with more colors when they go in the higher range. I'll just now import this and use in my space details. So my space details, I'm gonna have this few level bars, and then um, I'm just gonna render it in my UI in my space summary, where I have my space summary. So far as I'm connected, I'm gonna show the audio level bar. So let me just go to space count region, and somewhere here I'm gonna put my um, audio level bar. So far as I am connected, I'm gonna have my audio level audio audio level bars. Okay, so now we have indicator of audio level bars. We have our mic intensity indicator, and as well as our state and data for we are on or off. We can just proceed and check our room and see if we have all this working as expected. So I'm gonna just switch to my interface, and then I'll hit space. Let's get full screen. Create new space. I'm gonna say test new controls and display. I'm gonna have the same thing as the spec, as the description. Right. So when I do this, instantly we have this bars in by default. That's the audio level bars. If I turn on my mic, it is turn on mic actually now. It's good to see up here. It should start to update this per the intensity, or you're gonna have the intensity bars coming through. Okay. And by default, that confirms our logic to show the bars and then show the controls. Now, if I turn off the mic now you see it's supposed to turn off mic by default instead of the when it was stuck in turn on turn on mic and the like. So if I hit turn off mic, it should turn off my mic accordingly. Now, let's take a look at the space joining and creation. So assuming I'm to join this space now, we are still using a dummy. Uh, okay, let's just make one quick check of disconnecting the room. So for the case that I join this room on the other side, let's just confirm that before we move to fine tuning the join and create logic. So I join this space. I'm gonna go with the name tester. If just go up here. Now, if I end the space from here, now we should have that feedback here. and you see the the space is closed. So we actually have the exact logic for closing the space, the MediaSFU room, in addition to our space working like we would expect it to work. So now if I'm to join this room, you're gonna realize that it's always an action of create room, join room. So how do we change the switch to space details? How do we change the dummy? It says showroom details. How do we change the showroom details from being this dummy thing to something that's dynamic, dependent on the parameters we use in creating the space, and then also we don't just always create. It's supposed to be create. When it's created, we join if it's already created. That sort of logic. So we need to clean up that approach too. So in doing that, we are going to define two functions, basically create room and then the join room function. And all you're going to do is just, instead of this fixed these options, we're going to have our now by default, and then we'll programmatically um, populate the showroom details dependent on the case we are dealing with. And by default, if you check our usage, API, if you pay attention to remote name, when we create a meeting in MediaSFU in the spaces tag, we create a domain name which is remote underscore. So far as the remote name is still remote underscore, it contains remote underscore. We know we are here to create the actual room. Then once we do this, we are supposed to update the remote name so that we don't continuously like try to create. And then once we update this to the actual room name, then we can pass this to whoever is joining subsequently to use that to join the room. So essentially, two key logics. This is going to guide us to make sure, okay, do we have the room existing or not? If we do, we can join. If not, we need to create. And that's if we are in the case of the host who is only allowed to create the room. So let's head back to space details. And then in here, we'll create two functions. Like I mentioned, one is just going to be create room, and then one is just going to be join room. So um, somewhere, okay, I can just put a join room function, and by default, um, we're supposed to just populate the current room details with whatever we have. So let me just, and we are not going to use the we're not going to use the option of displaying it because, like I mentioned, it's supposed to be the ID of the user, which is going to be the SFU. By default, you can't use our display. It might be with spaces and more characters than we expect. And then for the meeting ID, this is supposed to be the remote name. That is if and only if it it exists. So we need our action, we need our name, we need our meeting ID, our source parameters, and then our update source parameters uh, function. Just so that it's clear on the way. So this is going to be our join function. Now our uh, create room function also is going to be technically the same thing. We're just going to update the showroom details to be one action of create, ID of the user, with duration. We're gonna have a space duration. So I'm gonna get this auto complete editors, and if it exists, normally we have our this duration in milliseconds. So If it's actually true, you just have to translate that to minutes as expected by MediaSFU. So this is going to be 60 by 1,000 divided by 60 by 1,000 to convert it from milliseconds to minute. Now, capacity as well, we do have the space capacity. So you're going to do with space capacity. Okay. So when we have an action to create, we have a duration, we have a capacity, we have our name, and then we have our source parameters, and then our update source parameters. So we have basically everything we need to create or generate. Now, because this is a race issue, we need to make sure have 2 ongoing or 3 ongoing requests at the same time. So we'll make a function, we'll have a function which is basically a check of if room is created or not. So basically we say if there is no underscore remote name, it's created. If it exists, the room is not created. So we're gonna have is room created. That's a function that checks for the case that we don't really have a remote in our space remote name. I thought again our show data is created. Now, for the fact that we can have the the MediaSFU handler initially displayed in our interface, we need to make a logic to show. We only show the MediaSFU handler if we do have our space details populated, our show details, whatever we need to pass should be provided before we show the space. So we're gonna create one, our showroom, what we call showroom, so that it actually comes to the UI, and then we pass that to as a condition to show the room, and that's also going to rely on if this is created or not. So I'm gonna go up to somewhere on showroom details. I'm gonna create a state which is called showroom, and basically it's going to be be our case to add it to the UI or not. Now we are gonna create a check so that we make sure we are not doing repeated action. So we're gonna call this is pending.current. So if it's pending.current, it means let's just wait and complete a pending one. So let's update our function. So our general dot function now we check for is it pending? If not, so if it's pending, if it's pending at current, we just return. Else I'll set is pending at current to be true. Now, if you update the parameters, we're just gonna set once you have the parameters, you're gonna set showroom to true. Then you're gonna set is pending. So you're gonna set pending at current, pending at current to false. And then same logic is going to apply to here. And then we're gonna have the same thing on this side. Says shown to true and then expanding the current is equal to false. So essentially, if you still have a race issue, you can just maybe change this when you actually have the source parameters updated in our monitor of source change. So in summary, we have the logic to show and then control the show. Now we need to just change our condition this for space MediaSFU handler. So let's condition this and then we have MediaSFU handler. MediaSFU handler. All right, let's make this dependent on showroom. So and then finally we have the configuration now. We need a listener for when we join the space. Depending on whether we are the host or we are not the host, or whether the room has been created or not. Um, let's create the room accordingly. So basically, we need to check a state check if we join. or we basically when we join the spaces tech, we need to create a room or join a room conditionally based um on some basic checks. So let's look at where we have the join room function, and somewhere here I'll make a check of the eligibility to join the room or not, and then so so basically we are gonna do two things. One is if we can join the room and then we have not yet shown the room, we can check to see if there's no room. So no room basically is it's true if there's a remote underscore in the name. If there's no room and you are the host, and then they're not having the current pending operation, we create the room. But then if the room is created, it means it's either created already by the host and you are the host or you are someone else. And we are not showing the room, then we we join the room. So essentially, just to check off, is it right for us to join the room or create the room? So I don't have a necessary double or attempts to create or join the room. Now, currently, do you have a physical button in our system to manually connect? For some reason, if we join and then we are not auto connected, we have a manual button to connect the room now. It is not yet implemented. So in here, so in here, uh, instead of not yet implemented, we'll also be making a manual check and then connect as to if we can connect. So instead of displaying this message, we are gonna make a check. Can we join the room? Basically, all those can we join is a room created. If not, we connect to the room. So create or connect to the room. So here I'm gonna have if we cannot join, we have this. If we can join, and then it's not sure, we do that. If it's not created, and it's not we are not showing the room, that means we can create it. Else, basically, we can handle the exception, whatever it's left. So basically, you can create or join depending whether we haven't done that already. Now, for the fact that we are reliant on the uh, update of remote underscore to make sure we have created a room, let's have that update in our source chain so that when we detect that actually we have created a room and we haven't yet updated the space, we make a call to our local API. We have an update space in our local um, update space to just update the room name at least so that we know it exists so for whoever is coming next to make use of it. So I know show room details. I'm gonna go to where we have the listener for source change. In here, so far as we can guarantee that there's a room name of not empty, we're gonna make the same checks. One, do we have no room? So in here, um, we don't want to be doubling. So if we make a check that actually there is no room like our system, then one we have to update the space to the room name. So uh, if we have no room, we are gonna call our update space to update just the room name. We have a couple of things we could update, but we are gonna do just the room name. So now um, we can get our update space from our API. Okay, so back in here. So once we can call our update space, let's probably put this together. Uh, I'm not gonna need a set message for source parameters changed. That's fine. Uh, I can just console up the name of the room to for once to make sure that we have updated the room name. Now, if we updated the room name, let me just no if we have that. Now the next check is going to be whether uh the room exists or not. So basically, if the room if room exists, which is our no room check, is false, then whoever is coming in, or even if the host returning, they can still join the room. So if they are in the space already, it's just going to update the space from okay, there's no more uh, connected to is connected. It's a guarantee that has happened. So um, if one, if there's no room, we do the update to the space. If there's a room, you are not connected, we just set the state to connected. Um, that practically guarantees that we have an update in our space for the name for whoever needs to join, and then uh, whoever needs to join subsequently after we created the event. Um, now, now with the listeners, I'm gonna have um, this, and then with the updates, and let's take a look at our UI now for the affected changes. You can just go back to our browser, and then I'm gonna create a new space. I'm gonna say test new by display. Now copy this and then have that as a description. So if I do create space now, uh, we have in mind now, back here if showroom, so this space is supposed to be showroom and so it's just going to should fix now. And then so what I will do now is just join this meeting as another participant. But then for the fact that there's a storage, it's a storage of whoever is actively using this, I can just do this from another browser as opposed to this. Else, I'm gonna just enter this missing event as the same user. So I will join this as another user in a different browser, or probably like an incognito mode or something. So let's do this in Edge, just to give us another kind of different context. Let's put it into one. So I'm gonna just go with the name, say Bob, for example, and I'm gonna look for the live this new. Okay, so in here, now I have joined the space with Bob, and on the other side, quickly here you have Alice and then okay, and above. So by default, we turn on our media here, and I'm gonna turn on data the other side. Uh, if we turn on our in here as well, if I allow this, uh, okay, think we are probably disconnected. Okay, so this is a B. And from here we have user. Okay, so this is fine. By default, on the side of the other user for webinar display, we are just showing the mini grid. The host is normally displayed on the main grid. So if you were to start a screenshot or something, you're not going to see that in the side of the other view, which is absolutely fine. Per the UI display now, our limit of using spaces tech. Okay, so but then the host sees every user just next to it. So they are displayed. If we are to join this in the browser, grab this and then oops, we get a meeting name. I'm gonna join this as a tester. So I have, like I mentioned, the host displays on the main grid, which I'm showing, and then you're gonna have the other user and then yourself. So um, so in here we have the user and the host. Now, by default, if you double click on participant name as the host, there's an option to delete the user, and then there's an option. There should have been an option to mute the user. So because user B, which is Bob's, by default, we are sending ID, so the ID goes out to user B. Because Bob's media is on, we should have had the option to turn off the media from here. And we could use this, but we are never going to have this going on. We have to get rid of this UI song. But then we should have the option to have the mic here. And there's the state, the renderer we are using spaces tech is dependent on having a listener for the user's media on. By default, we are not making such a change. So you realize that one, we need to update spaces tech, the space details to cause an update in space for when the users makes those changes. And then two, when I remove user B, if I remove user B now, by default, it's the user is all of the participants is removed in MediaSFU room. We still have the participants in our spaces tech UI. And you're gonna check the other side, so you're gonna see the participants in the UI. So one, we need to, in our spaces tech, just two cleanups, update the mute state to what uh, is being observed in MediaSFU room. And then two, one, we actually need to ban from spaces tech as well. So let me just end this now. In our space details, we just need to do two things. One is when we are monitoring the mic status, we need to also we need to update the our local space, our local API to effect that. So when we are listening to changes on in audio, we check the participants and then we update the current participant to whatever value the current audio state is saying. So in here, I'm going to grab new participants as the current space participants, and then I'll just update the status of the current user to whatever value we have currently as the muted one. And then we just update the space to update the specific participants with the new change in the current. So in that case, if the user turns on the mic, this change in space should alert the hosts to be able to also have the option to click their mic and mute them. Now the second option is the option to ban the participant. So by default, we're just using our MediaSFU room. We are not banning in spaces tech, but we do have a ban participants in spaces tech. So ban participants. So we just have to use the ban participant as well. So in space details, so when we are removing participant. So you're gonna look for handle. In here, we need to call the band participant as well. So we're just gonna do band participant, and we need that from our API. So with these two updates now, we have one, the ability to remove this from space, and actually also to have the mic toggle happen on the whole side if the user is actually not muted. So we can just check this out briefly. In here, I'm going to create a new space, and I'm going to say test remote controls. I'm going to put this here as a description. In here, I can do create space. So if I go on the side of the the edge, and I do join space, if I can turn on my mic here, or here they do the same thing for me uh, as a non-host. So, or even as a host, you can turn on your mic from your own control. So if I turn on my mic, now from the side of the host, now you should have the controls to turn off the mic. So if we have to click the control now, you have to click the control now, you're gonna have the user's media um, restricted, as in muted. So and they're gonna have the same state as here, as turn on their mic. Now, one thing that is potentially going to happen is that when they try turn on their mic again, it's going to be blocked for some time, because by default, MediaSFU, when the host restricts the user, it sets a couple of seconds timer before you can get access to reuse the media. Now, if you were to be paying attention to MediaSFU alerts, you would have had the message come through that you have this uh, kind of restricted by the host for some time. Now I can just briefly show that. So if I join the same meeting, I'm gonna get the meeting ID, and then to display to test that I can paste this here, and I confirm I'm gonna use the name tester. So if I go in here and I turn on, say, my mic, or for example my video, turn on my mic. Now what's going to happen is that from the side of the host, if the host um, turns off my mic from here, on my side, the mic is gonna go off, but then I'm not gonna be able to turn it on. So if I try to say turn this on again, what is going to pop up is the message by the, so we're going to say access denied by host. Now by default, we are not seeing this in our application because we are not listening to any MediaSFU alerts now. Other alerts that might be key are things like meeting has ended, basically other critical things you might want to listen to. Assuming for some reason your has ended and your space is still running, it means eventually whatever media is being sent is not going to be received, or uh, it's going to be received by the other participants. So one, for very key things like soccer disconnect and the like, you can think of that. You want to at least handle some kind of alerts from the client there. So here too, the very last check was to ban participants. So let's try and ban a user and see whether we get them off. So if I hit the ban participant now, we get a user removed from the space. And I think when we have to go to the user side, they get banned. If we go to the last part, they have the banned status on their profile. Okay, so essentially we have primarily everything we need to kind of have specific logic complete. We'll do probably the very last checks of one. our alerts. Let's get the alerts, the key alerts we get from MediaSFU. There's a couple of them we don't really need to pay attention to all. You can specifically just listen to the ones you care about because of uh, your application was a requirement. So let's one create local reference to MediaSFU alert, and there's every alert message with a type, and then we show a couple of them, which you're not gonna be so extensive in this implementation. So, space details. I'm gonna just create a state called alert message. Then somewhere around here, I can please put that. This can get a vendor, maybe somewhere here. Okay, so for media SFU alert, what we will do is that where we listen to the source changes, we are going to set this. So where source change. So, so somewhere in here, I'm gonna just put, so let's just make a check against what we have. So if we are not the same as our current media SFU alert, we just set our message to that. Now, there are a couple of messages that come through that are very key. For example, if the meeting has ended, that's a very short check for you to say, okay, uh, we have to like disconnect or end the meeting, whether you are the host or you are the host or the not the host, you are the host or not the host. So if specifically the message is, let's say it's if a disconnected message, meeting has ended, then you have to end the space. If else, if you're a non-host, you can just leave the space. So that's one critical one. Another one is for screen share, which obviously is not going to come true for a spaces tech, but just as an illustration, if you are having a screen share in MediaSF and you're on a portrait display, there's a message that comes through which says like rotate your phone to a landscape mode, and then that's done just based on some computations of your current display. Now for the fact that you're using a no UI mode, you probably have that come popping up because it doesn't match the minimum requirements for the message to stop coming through. So for some message like that, and maybe other messages you deem irrelevant, you can just completely kind of ignore. So that's just an example of a kind of message you can obviously ignore. Else, if you get to try out a screen share in this context, you're gonna have like a bunch of that messages coming through. So in here, I'm not gonna pay attention to anything that contains the message rotate. So I'm filtering out anything that is rotate. So in summary, we have our listener for our space messages now added. Now now we can just get what's the name? We can just get rid of our flexible grid now. We don't really need it. Uh, flexible grid now. Let's mention that one already, and then in here. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of flexible grid for now. Okay, so if I save this and then we go to our UI, um, screen space, then create a new space, which is this final steps. So copy this. Okay, already copied as description. So if I create space, now in here, Let's check out that once more. Again coming through. So in our other side, we are gonna go to this new one. So if we join the space, okay. So if we are to turn on our mic, and then we go from the side of the host, and we turn this off. Now, if we come back to the side of the viewer, if to turn their mic on, um, we should be able to get this briefly function. Okay. So we should be able to see the message from the host that says you cannot. So anytime I try to click this, I should be able to get. You probably have to have a listener to display the written message. So you can turn this because access is denied by the host. So basically, that's the logic of that. And if I go back to the host side, it's practically going to be the same. Now, one very last key thing is that we have, within the context of spaces tech, in terms of audio transmission, with our audio grade, we have the capacity to receive all the audios produced by others in the room. Of course, we don't want to listen to our own audio. So using audio grade as it is, we have the capacity to handle every media in the room. You also have the capacity to send your media to everyone in the room. And that kind of completes all what you ever need for audio transmission and then reception in a context like this. Now, in a very rare case, you might get what I call the mini audio players widget coming through. So by default, when you are in a meeting, if for some reason, for maybe your display says video for pagination purposes, someone is speaking and they're not in view, this kind of mini audio player pops through. So let me just quickly explain that. So if I go to mediasfu.com/components, so somewhere in here there is a mini audio player. Basically, this kind of a draggable floating player, which just tells you who is actively speaking. For the fact that they are not in view, it only occurs when you're, and it is super rare, but then it's something that could still pop up in your audio grid, even though you are not using any UI from MediaSFU. So just to illustrate it, I'll join this meeting as another person, and then I'll I'll, I'll make um, an illustration briefly. So if I go here, hope I can still join this, confirm. And then the name is so if I join this event now, and uh, from the side of the other participants, if I am to turn on mic here, oh no, my access is denied by, okay. So if I'm to turn on the mic of the new participants, uh, and I go in here, if I am to force my uh, display to one, I want to see only video participants. And then with the video participants, I want to force video participants. So sometimes you want to see video participants, then MediaSFU's algorithm feels there is an interesting speaker at a point in time. So it's going to show it to you. But if you force that, it means you're not going to show any audio card only in your display. So if I force this and I do save, you're going to see in the UI that test2 becomes this draggable user, and I'm not gonna have test2 in my UI again. So the only way to be absolutely sure that test2 is not gonna show up, the new user is not gonna show up with this, is to set set the display autograph to off, turn it off. So if I turn this, if I save this, you realize that that UI is not coming through. So that element is not coming through. So in the same way for Spaces Tech in our audio grid, which renders some of these components, uh, we can illustrate this and then also make a sure check that it never happens, because that's the only extreme case that although there's a likelihood it might happen, although rare, it's still there. So let me just end the space from here. So in the space, let's go to our show our space details and render the similar logic. So first put display and then show only video participants. That's just going to be let's look at our source change listener. And in here, I'm gonna do two things, which is one, post full display and make sure it's only for video participants. So if I make a call to update media display type to video and then make a optimize to true, I'm replicating the same logic of forcing that. Now I'm gonna do that for this the other joiners as well. So um, so we save this now and we go to our application. I'm gonna just create a new space and then say test pause auto. I'm gonna have this as a description. So if we create a space, now I'm just gonna join this on the side of the other user. So here we hit the join. In here, if I turn on my mic, now from the view of the host, you're gonna see user B as this floating um, audio component, because it has B's has forced a video. Obviously, you don't have these controls in the space, but just as an illustration. So the absolute way to completely get of this draggable UI thing from coming out is to also force the same do not show display audio graph. Now, audio graphs, and now the call to that is autowave, update autowave to false. So end this, just end the space, and then in our application, if we also call the same thing, which is uh, instead of these two, I'm going to call update autowave to false. This is a guarantee that it never occurs under any circumstance. So this as well. Uh, so 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 with this update autowave added both on the host and the other people who join their side, we have a guarantee that one, we have audio um, support in our spaces tech in both sending and receiving other people. And then the current context is contained as we desire, with only our UI items displayed as we need, as opposed to having some other pop-ups from MediaSFU. So effectively, this ends our guide illustration of MediaSFU Spaces Tech as an audio example. Now, if you care about much more advanced things, think of how do I render my custom element as opposed to MediaSFU's this GSX element from audio grid. So how do I make use of media streams, transform display items, screen share, much more advanced things focusing on videos selection, and then camera switches and the like, as opposed to just rendering one camera. You can take a look at our MediaSFU's final to advanced. So they replace MediaSFU advanced, and then it will take our MediaSFU final project, and then we are gonna add all these more advanced stuff to go from MediaSFU's final to MediaSFU advanced. So that should be all for this for now, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.